Fated Rebirth is a dark fantasy romance that really centers around survival. Our FMC is on a journey to reclaim not only her body, but also her mind, and to find peace in the way of vengeance. I have the privilege of chatting with the author who brought us this amazing story, Reno our Mist. Hi, everyone. I am Alex, and welcome back to Pages and Perspectives with Cover to Cover. As I mentioned before, I am joined today by the fantastic Reno our Mist. So, hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Oh, me too. I loved your book, so I'm very excited to dive
Thank you.
a little further into the why behind the book, the why behind the characters, and
Yes.
hopefully maybe a girl can dream a little bit of a hint or teaser for what we can expect next.
Definitely. We'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I did also want to just kind of start this episode and preface for everyone listening. There will be heavy topics discussed during this episode, as well as spoilers, but we will be discussing sexual assault of varying degrees. And as Reno so eloquently put in her prologue, consent matters in life as well as in what you read. So please take that into consideration as you move forward to listening.
Yes.
So we'll dive right into it. So I did want to start. So your two characters, we have
Yes.
Violet and we have Rowan. They are both, without a doubt, very, very strong personalities.
Yes.
Separate and together, which I love. They play off each other very well. They're from different times, but they happen to, in this reincarnation process, be living in the same time.
Correct.
Where did the inspiration for your two characters come from? We can start with Violet, because she's a very, very specific, very bold, strong personality.
Yes. Violet is actually written, she's the daughter from my debut book, One More Chance, which is the father stories. But you don't have to read that book in order to start Fated Rebirth. However, when I wrote Violet, I personally wrote her because I wanted to write a character that essentially went through sort of the same experience that I did growing up, and I wanted to make her a strong character and give her that opportunity to fight back, compared to, some of the personal experiences that I had in my life. So in a way, it was a reflection of the type of person I wish I could have been given the opportunity to grow into. And I allowed her to be this character that essentially would not take no for an answer, right? Living this one perspective and one life without any choice, and then to all of a sudden be given this freedom. She no longer felt the need to be, I guess you could say, put down. So I made her and I wrote her to be very, very strong, because I wanted that with myself growing up. And obviously, as an adult, I know better now, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you can tell me if I'm overstepping, but it almost sounds like creating this character was, I don't know if therapeutic is the right word, but a way of almost you taking back your strength and your power and creating this FMC who truly is. She's a powerhouse.
Yes.
And I love the way she doesn't let others deter her from her mission, and she's focused on what she wants.
Yeah.
And our MMC Rowan, who's fantastic, and we can get into this more later, as I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
He supports this, and he supports her autonomy and her ability to make her own decisions and be her own person.
Yes, absolutely. Growing up, I actually had a lot of friends that had, unfortunately, a lot of experiences with sexual assault. So it wasn't just me. It was also, Violet was in a way a representation for my friends as well that I spoke with, that, for the longest time, we were always told to keep our voices quiet, not to say anything, don't cause any issues. So I honestly wrote a character as a reflection of how to fight against what was considered the norm for us growing up.
No, that is extremely powerful, and we briefly spoke about this in our messages preparing for this, but as also someone who experienced sexual assault at a very young age, and of course it doesn't matter what age it's at, it's a traumatic and horrendous thing. I understand that feeling of just kind of helplessness, because as a grown woman, of course you see things a little differently because you're grown, you're an adult. As a child, you don't have that strength in the forefront of your mind that a Violet would have. And I do think Violet is a character, kind of how you mentioned, you wrote
Mm-hmm.
her not just to encompass your journey, but the things that others have gone through. I do think she's a very strong representation of what it's like to go through those types of things and how to move forward and the inner strength that can come with that. So I did want to thank you for that, because it was a little bit of a hard read for my own personal journey, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I was like, I didn't want to put it down because the representation and the way you did it, I thought was beautifully done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, just like any other reader, I started off reading dark romance as a way of processing because, dark
Mm-hmm.
romance gives you that opportunity to also read through those characters. So writing Violet was definitely therapeutic. And I'm not saying that it represents everyone's experience.
Oh,
Absolutely
absolutely.
not. But having the opportunity to write the character the way that I did was very uplifting for me. And though this information has obviously not been mentioned in my book or in my author's note. So it's not like the readers going into it are going to have this expectation of, oh, she's writing based on her and her friend's personal experience. It's nothing like that
Mm-hmm.
at all. But to be able to have the opportunity to write a character like that is definitely therapeutic. Just because you pour a little bit of yourself into books as you write them, regardless. So I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think you did a fantastic job, because I think she empowers everything, from my humble opinion as a reader, that you
Yeah.
wanted her to encompass. Her
Yeah.
journey
Thank you.
was one of everything that you painted it out to be. It was exactly that. So,
Yeah.
big fan. And
And
I know you said we didn't have to read One More Chance, but now, of course, I have to go read
oh
One More
god.
Chance.
Everyone has been telling me that. I'm like, please guys, it was my first book.
No, I absolutely want to go back and read it now,
Oh
because
my goodness.
you sucked me in. So,
Well, I'm going to go ahead and preface like that one has not been touched by an editor. Also, it has on-page cheating and infidelity, and that is not everyone's cup of tea. So that's
yeah.
why I wrote the books the way that I did was
Mhm.
I didn't want people to feel like they had to have read One More Chance. So that's why the beginning of Fate of Rebirth is a little heavy on the world building when you first
Mhm.
start the story. But obviously, if you do go back and read through One More Chance, you'll get more Easter eggs and a little bit of a deeper understanding of
I
the story.
definitely I didn't feel like I was missing something when I began Fate of
Yeah.
Rebirth. So I think the heavy on the world being on the front end was definitely well done.
Thank you.
Because I didn't feel like I was left with questions at the beginning, like, wait,
Yes,
if
that's
they're coming to
good.
the house, do I need to go back?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I
yeah,
actually was had the opportunity to work with a development editor for Fate of
okay.
Rebirth. So
Oh,
she
nice.
knew that I had a different book, One More Chance, but she was able to help me create the story in a way that I'm grateful for if you were able to understand
Yeah,
everything
no,
without needing.
absolutely. Sometimes I know, like, you start a book and you're
Yeah.
kind of like, you feel like you're missing something, but that was not
Yes.
the case. This book started hot and heavy, and we were going
Yay. I'm
from
glad
the
to hear
beginning.
that. Thank you.
So I love Violet's, just the power behind her that made
Hmm.
her who she is and the character that we know and love.
Yeah.
What then inspired you, or where did you draw from for her counterpart being
Rowan.
Rowan?
I actually mentioned this also in another podcast I did. I wrote Rowan specifically for someone that I wish that I had growing up, is what it was.
Oh, that's
So,
beautiful.
yeah, like having gone through the different experiences that I did and not having, losing some of my friends and family because I tried to speak up my truths essentially. And I wrote Rowan to be the person that would always stand by your side, essentially. Um, but he's also obviously his own powerhouse. I made him dark and broody and the little
Yes, but
guardian that he is.
us readers love the dark and the
Yes.
broody and the touch her and you will be punished. We love
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
over consuming protectiveness. We adore that.
Yes. He was definitely my favorite to write. I know, Violet was more therapeutic, but Rowan was my favorite to write just because of that protectiveness that I wove into his story. Um, and it's so funny, like sometimes you'll hear this from writers, like as you're writing the story, you don't know what the characters are going to do. So I had my first draft and I remember thinking, I'm not happy with their dynamic. And then I started weaving in more elements and I'm like, oh, this is who he needs to be. This is who he needs to be for Violet. And I was able to make him the way that I did because of that. So he's definitely someone I wish that I had growing up when I was going through everything that I did. And that was his inspiration.
He definitely has that undying devotion And I guess I'll skip ahead a little because I feel like it's pertinent here. But like, for example, and I did mention spoilers if you're
Mm-hmm.
listening, when she tells him about her reincarnation, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, by the way,
Yeah.
I've been reincarnated. Like she throws it out there, and it's something that she's kept tight to the chest. This is not common knowledge to the world. She's shocked at the speed of which he believes her.
Yes.
There is no like, maybe you're crazy. Have you taken nothing like that? No,
Yep.
he given we know he believes her also for his because of his own experiences, but that's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of the type of person he is. He seems to take those he trusts and those that he like loves and cares for at face value. Like if you tell me this, if I have
Yes.
no reason not to believe you, I will believe you.
Yes. And I remember thinking when I was writing that scene, I didn't know if people were going to think that that wasn't realistic to some extent, because I never had a friend or a family member that did that with me, especially when I was voicing things that were happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until later in life, obviously, when I met my husband and everything, that he introduced that to me. I would tell him something and he would just accept it face value. And I was like, oh my God, there are people like that. There are
Yeah.
genuinely people that will believe you.
There are good people out there who will trust what you're telling
Yes, there are good people. That is a good way to put it. Yes.
them. Mm-hmm. No, I'm very happy you were able to find
Yeah.
that
Thank you.
partner, that peace in life. That's
Yes.
beautiful. Well, Roan is a fantastic character through and through. I fell in love with him very quickly. I know that they have a lot of sassy, snarky banter between the two of them,
Yes.
but I
They
felt
do.
like that almost made it more real for me.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the books, which I'm a big romantasy reader, so I'm
Yeah.
a sucker through and through for all the cliches. But sometimes things are a little too smooth, in my opinion, where it's almost like it just doesn't feel real. Um,
Yes.
because it's just too smooth. I don't know how else to put it. But the snarky banter and the sarcasm and the quips and the kind of pushing back, it felt natural and it felt healthy,
Yes.
especially with their prior friendship, which is
Hmm.
part of why I know you're worried about it being believable, how quickly he believed her, but I think that their buildup from their friendship and all the years they've known each other to what
Hmm.
eventually becomes a romantic and things they've been through, I think it read very naturally and very believable.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I had the most fun was definitely writing Violet's like quips at him to like kind of itch him on and stuff.
Oh, I loved it. I was like, she's so like, even though obviously it's a book and I'm reading it at my own pace. In my head, she's like so quick with it. She's just
Hmm.
not. It's just right out, and he always had
Yep.
something to say back. I loved it. I loved
Thank
when
you.
she like the little jealousy at the beginning with
Hmm.
the locker room scene and like those girls are ogling him and she's
Yes.
kind of like, don't you have more important things to do? And
Hmm.
she's jealous but doesn't want to admit it. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, my some of my favorite was definitely the after the shower scene where he's like, "You took long," and she's like, "Yeah, I did stuff while not thinking of you." I remember
Yeah,
laughing
I was
so hard.
like, oh, it was almost like I wanted to be like, oh, he can't handle her, but then you're like, oh, but maybe he's the one person who can handle
Hmm.
her
Yeah,
and
I had
embrace
fun with
her.
it for sure.
Oh, I imagine those because as a reader, those were fun to read. So thank you for
Yeah,
putting the time into writing
yeah.
them. Oh, awesome. So those, I mean, those are very beautiful and deep, I guess, inspirations and reasonings behind your characters and who they are and their development.
Hmm.
So not only were your characters complex, but your world itself was also fairly complex.
Yes.
Um, we are dealing with different times. So
Hmm.
we have the reincarnation aspect,
Hmm.
and then we also have the secret, unknown to most of the humans world of like vampires and mythical
Hmm.
creatures and like the underground club with the demon. Like there's a lot
Yes.
of various aspects, which I
That.
enjoy, but you don't typically see in every style of book
Hmm.
because it is a lot going on. I
It
guess my
is.
first question to you would be, what was the inspiration behind the reincarnation aspect of this book?
So the reincarnation aspect, that was actually because growing up, something that I heard a lot was, I wish I had never made that decision. There
Mm.
was, there is, you know how in life sometimes you make a decision and you have regret and you wish you could have gotten a second chance to
Hmm.
redo a choice that you made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I heard that a lot growing up. So the reincarnation was, for example, like in One More Chance, Levi also dies. You get hinted that in Fated Rebirth.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. so her dad essentially comes back 12 years into his body and finds out that he literally just woke up a few days before he walked out on his wife. So he's been giving a second chance to fix his marriage, essentially, right?
Okay.
Um, so, for example, with like Fated Rebirth, it was to feed along that premise of essentially like these individuals are being thrown back into prior years, essentially. Um, because it's also hinted with Rowan a little bit as you read through the story that they are assuming that he's also from the future, just very far along the future, when
Mm-hmm.
essentially the supernaturals and the veil have fallen. Um, and in a way, like they both have their own regrets. Violet regrets that she never could escape, that she never could stand up and get back home. Rowan has regrets because he could never protect the person that he wanted to protect.
Yeah.
So the reincarnation feeds into essentially it's a second chance. I know it's a weird twist on that trope,
Yeah.
um,
No, that's
but mhm,
no, that's just I keep saying beautiful, but I don't know how because I know these topics like, they're heavy topics. They're not anything that anyone particularly loves to discuss or like, oh, this is what I just want
yeah,
to throw out at the dinner table. But they're important topics, and I think it's
hmm
hard to represent these topics in a way that makes them seem powerful.
hmm
Um, so I didn't even think of the reincarnation as a positive second chance in a way because the
hmm
way it reads, and I think it's almost intended this way, is that they don't know why it happened. They don't know if it
correct,
was a fluke in the system. Are they here for a
correct,
reason? Is it
correct.
because they did something wrong? We're like trying to figure this out. So looking at it in that light kind of gives me a different perspective on
Yes,
the whole
yes,
thing, which I love, and I prefer than what was going on in my own head. And I knew we'd figure out more, of course, as your story goes on. But that is just
yeah. With book two, obviously, those are going to be more exploration. I'm the type of writer that I like to have a slow build up, which is why like the first book essentially as I like to joke about it, it's your prologue to what you're going to hit for the second
oh,
book.
that makes sense.
It does. Because
Yeah.
as I was writing it, originally it was going to be a standalone, but by the time I hit like I think it was 200,000 words or something. I'm like, this is going to be too big. So I cut it to the 123 with the development editor, wove
Mm-hmm.
it the way that I did to try and essentially make the story still be immersive and meaty and also give a lot of the reader the things that they want. I know some of the reviews that I've gotten have complaints about that because you literally stop right at a cliffhanger when things
Oh,
are
I'm a
getting
sucker
good.
for a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am glad this isn't just a one book
hmm
situation because I feel like I said, the topics, it's a lot to digest. But then
hmm
also you want to do those portions justice.
Yes.
But then also we have all this mythical creature situation going on in the demon and underground. There were so many
hmm
important parts. I feel like it wouldn't have done the story justice if it had just been
Yeah.
right there. I would have
And
almost
that,
wanted more. Self.
yes. And that's what the development and editor agreed upon too. Cause, one of the things that we discussed as well, books are obviously political. Even in
Mhm.
my writing, the books are political. Obviously I'm
Yeah,
touching on
always.
very, very heavy topics, right? Even if I wasn't discussing it from my own personal experiences, I was pulling topics in from things that were happening around in life as well. So for
Mhm.
example, with Rowan, I wanted to show how he feels very negative towards the supernaturals. Remember,
Mhm.
like he did
Yes.
not like
Yes.
Natalia when he first met her because he
Mhm.
just assumed she was a terrible person because she was a vampire.
Yes,
And
he
then,
did very much assume.
yes, but then I also wrote from Violet's perspective when she met Natalia and she was normal. And then also Alice, her roommate, is friends with Natalia. So hearing Alice's experience with Natalia, how they grew up together essentially, gave
Mhm.
Natalia a more human aspect of things. Because sometimes as humans, we just take things from face value and
Oh,
we don't
absolutely.
think about what the other person has to go through to become who they are. So while
Mm.
Natalia is definitely, they're all in a way all morally gray. That's the fun thing about my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously Natalia does some things towards the end of the book that most readers would probably hate about with her. Um, but she also has her own life experiences that you see through Alice's eyes when she talks happily about how they grew up together.
Mhm.
And in a way, Rowan represents essentially humanity's negativity at face value, whereas Violet gets to, when she talks with people, she gets to learn them more, and she represents the other side of humanity. And that also gets to convene together towards book 2 as well, because Rowan, as the books progress, both, I'm sure you've seen, both Violet and Rowan are growing individually in their own
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is so easy just in real life and even in books to do that. You just immediately assume someone is a terrible person based
Mm-hmm.
off of the very little bit of information you have or what you've
Mm-hmm.
heard from someone else or strictly their appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's easy to slip into that negative mindset. It's Rowan. I definitely feel like I start to see him shift a little bit as he's
Yes.
spending more time with Violet because
Mm-hmm.
she's very inquisitive. Like she wants to know people.
Yeah.
Seems like she really wants to go deeper,
Mm-hmm.
and she's rubbing off a little bit on him,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. So it gave me hope that as a character couple that they're going to kind of help each other develop in the ways that the other needs to develop a little more in. Uh,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
I do
they,
think humanity was reflected really well with
thank
Rowan's
you.
character. We also, and this is where I said we get complex because you mentioned our vampire friend.
Yes.
So, and you're right. When we got introduced to her through Violet, it was just this beautiful, stunning, perfect human like person, who
Mm-hmm.
was friends with her roommate, and really nothing more negative there. We have, I feel like, the full spectrum of mythological creatures or just our
Yes.
fantasy creatures. What made
Yes.
you want to tackle more than just one specific type instead of doing, like, say, just a shifter or just a vampire or just a demon book? What made you kind of want to encompass the whole crew?
So my, specifically for my world, and how it works is essentially there are, it's what I guess you would call it. It's obviously urban fantasy because it takes place in
Hmm.
modern world.
Yeah.
And growing up, the premise had always been for me, I loved reading folklore. I loved reading paranormal books. I loved reading history about gods, goddesses. I also loved psychology as well. So all of that meshing together, I had always wondered as a kid, like, where do gods and goddesses go? If these folklores existed, where do these monsters go? And then obviously, with the Fae over in England, they have the other side, which is essentially the Vale equivalent for my
Hmm.
world to some extent. Um, so when I was building my world and thinking about it, I'm like, what if they all exist? What if, in particular, there's all the gods and goddesses hang out, but they're fighting with each other. They treat worshippers like currency because, in a way, it's a reflection of religion, how religions would fight with each other to try and get
Yeah.
people to follow specific
People,
things.
land, everything.
Yes, exactly. And the byproduct is obviously the humans hurt for it, right? And then you've also got all the monsters that are made. What if monsters are made when man think of them? So if someone creates and designs a folklore, then that is the birth or the origin of a monster. So that was essentially my world building, is everything exists to some extent.
Yeah.
But as time goes on and as these monsters and gods and goddesses, whatever they are, as they're slowly being forgotten, that
Hmm.
also means that they're slowly dying off, because it's true. That's what's happening in history. We fight so hard,
Yeah.
especially with the Egyptians. We're digging through trying to find as many stories to try and keep them relevant, because not all stories are written down. Some stories
Yeah.
are only done orally and they get forgotten. Um, and because they get forgotten, then we never learn from them. So I wanted to have that reflect in my world building, was essentially the repercussions of them, just like us, desperately trying to fight and survive. They too are also having their struggles while trying to live hidden in our world. And it's getting to the point that they're not sure if they can remain hidden anymore, because if they continue the way that they are, they're going to die out.
Wow. That's wow. I'm just saying wow because I was genuinely curious because I do read a lot of books where we do have just one type
Mm-hmm.
of creature of some degree. So I was genuinely curious when I saw that we had, like, at the end when we have our
Yes.
demon main character And then we have all the people in the club, and I was like, I wonder how these people connect. Like, what do they all have in common? Why are they gathering? Why are they the way they are?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that answered my question right there and speaks to that. And it's crazy how much, you're right, history does, like with these various religions, and like you said, the Egyptians, it's no longer practiced or discussed, so it just disappears.
Correct.
And
Yep.
that sounds harsh, but
Mm-hmm.
it essentially, it's not something, they aren't stories or lessons that are still mainstream anymore. They're just in the
Correct.
past, unless you happen to be interested in it.
Correct. And the fun aspect that I had was obviously, for my world, and this will get talked about a little bit. So it's a tiny bit of a spoiler, but there is, I guess you could say, like a truce with the gods. They're not supposed to interact with the humans. That's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
common theme that you see even in
Yeah.
our real world when you read about folklore and stuff. Like the gods technically are not supposed to influence man.
Mm-hmm.
But in my world, it was like, okay, if I can't technically do it, then I can have other monsters, or I can
Like
make
by
deals.
proxy kind of
Yes,
situation.
exactly. Yeah. So if I have proxies, how can I influence the world? So that's why you've got the secret society aspect of it with the dark academia going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because Natalia talks about how she's from,
I was just
uh,
thinking of.
yeah, her family, how it's connected now essentially to the pharmaceuticals. The introduction of God's blood was done, where essentially, the problem of monsters, the paranormal monsters dying out, like what could they do to fix it? That's what God's blood is, and they briefly touch on it on Fated Rebirth book 1 too. So
Yes, that was, it was almost something that I had to double back because I was like, wait a second, hold
mm-hmm.
on. I like my first little like skim through because I was so into the story and excited. I was just going.
Yeah.
Um, so I doubled back, and we did touch on like the god's blood, and it's just a crazy concept to me that that's essentially like the supernatural's way of trying to stay around and
Yes.
keep
Uh-huh.
their magic around and keep their power around, is that they've, yeah, infiltrated the pharmaceutical companies
Uh-huh.
and done this magical medicinal style transaction into what would be humans. And then, please correct me if I'm wrong, but Rowan, correct, with his hearing and everything, is
mm-hmm.
someone who I don't know if benefits would be the right word, but is a
Yes.
product of the god's blood.
Yes, exactly. So the premise behind the God's blood, because in Rowan's time he talks about it. God's blood is introduced into human and is now in every human, essentially, and it makes humans easier to breed with the supernaturals. So what they're
Why?
doing, yeah, what they're trying to do is essentially like, this is the beginning, and Rowan has already seen a version of the ending, so he knows to some extent, at least in his timeline, what happens,
How this plays out. And I
how
think
it plays.
that's where I have to make the mental connection back to, is that like Rowan, he knows where, in theory, with how things stand, he knows where this is going. He knows
Or
how
he
this plays out. He
He
thinks.
thinks, yeah, because
Think.
I left it up in the air about how things, whether or not for sure Rowan is from the same timeline, but essentially,
I
yes.
know. I'm gonna have to chart this out, because even when I was preparing our outline, I'm like, okay, no, Rowan's here, and then I think Violet was here, and then the dads are here. I'm like, I'm gonna need a chart once this is
Yeah,
all said and done to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
yeah. The time, it was a lot of fun doing that.
When it's as complex as your world is, I don't want to miss anything. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I need to make sure I have dotted all, like crossed all my T's, dotted all my I's. Um, no, that's fantastic, and it's really deep, and I love all your efforts to reflect real life
Yes.
in this dark romance fantasy, because I think sometimes people think just this genre in general, whether it's dark romantasy or just regular romantasy, they just assume it's kind of frivolous, or like
Hmm.
we're just reading about sex and everyone's having a good time and that's
Hmm.
that, and that's just not the case. It's
No. Yeah, the
much deeper
deeper.
than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, for
um
sure.
much deeper, and deserves much more respect, but that is neither here nor there. So I did want to transition a little bit
Sure.
into just some of the, I guess, things that were new to me.
Hmm.
And one of those being, and please correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but the shibari.
The
Am I saying that
Shibari.
correctly?
Yeah.
Yes. I thought that was fascinating because
Yes.
typically when you read about rope play in books, it can tend to just be a lot of just BDSM, sexual gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Which is no shame to those books at all.
Oh,
But
sure.
that kind of tends to be just what it is. So
Mm-hmm.
when I saw the rope play initially, like in our tropes, in our kind of what to expect,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I guess my expectation was, which I'm very glad, and I was blown out of the water the direction that it actually went. Um, it wasn't something that was just innately sexual or about the dominant one's gratification at all. It was actually about trust and comfort and like safety, depending on
Yes.
how they used it. And then we learn also it can be used. I believe it was under the same name Shibari just used for the
No,
darker. What's
Hojutsu
the?
is for
There we go.
torture. That was different.
Thank you.
Yes.
So different type, but what made you want to use the ropes for both the trust and comfort side, and then the flip side of the getting our vengeance?
So that one was also a reflection of current modern day because
Love it.
shibari is something that is practiced in the kink community,
Okay.
which I was part of for a little bit, for a little while. And I have personal experience with shibari and the rope ties. I was what people would consider a rope bunny, which means I liked to be tied. And then the
Okay.
person that does the tying, so Rowan, is essentially the rigger, is the terminology.
Okay.
And no, rope tying, you have to have trust in order to.
Absolutely.
And it's not just in the kink community. I also wanted to reflect because once again, the sexual soul. Like when you're entering into a relationship, you want to trust the other person and you want to feel safe with them, whether
Absolutely.
it's with regular sex, whether it's with exploring different things in your sexual life. Having that communication is really important.
Mm-hmm.
With rope tying and shibari, that communication is a little bit more upfront because you need to be communicating with the person that is tying you up on whether or not you're in pain or if there's any nerves that the rope is touching or if the ropes are too tight. Those are things that you for a healthy relationship, especially in the BDSM scene, you need to make sure that you're going back and forth with them, letting them know and checking in with each other. Because also the rigger might be really nervous when he's doing the
Mm-hmm.
rope ties on you, and if you're not responding back to his questions, then he's got to check in and make sure that he hasn't accidentally hurt you
Yeah.
or there's a lack of blood loss. So that was chosen for the story because it was a reflection of just how much trust both of them had to have with each other to even do something like that. Because I think Rowan even talks about it that he's never tied someone before. He's only
Yeah.
ever
He's always kind of kept it to his man. I assume to be it was a mannequin, correct?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. Kept it kind of there.
because it is it can be dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you tie the ropes too tight, you can have blood loss and circulation, which you learn in the prologue when
Mm-hmm.
yes, uh-huh.
That's
Um,
intentional. Yes.
and then with Violet, to have someone that respected her and checked in with her constantly, making sure that she was okay,
Mm-hmm.
also helped build that trust up for her and for her to feel safe. Plus, there is a sense of, especially with the particular tie that I referenced, that's in the character art that you guys see,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the ebook. Um, it does essentially feel like a hug. So I tried to hopefully do it justice. I had some people reach out that practiced in the scene and told me I did a really good job with the writing, so that made me happy. But it essentially feels like a hug and makes you feel safe. It releases endorphins in you. Um,
Now,
so
as someone who had zero background, going into that,
yeah.
that is definitely how I read that. I read it as like almost. I you can correct me if I'm wrong,
Hmm.
but the way the ropes are tied, the way they're knotted, and the pressure points,
Yes.
because I know our body's full of them.
Hmm.
The way the pressure points hit and the tautness of the ropes and such, yeah, created almost like a safety cocoon
Yes.
in my head.
For that
Um,
particular tie,
like
yeah.
yes, for that particular tie, like a comfort, yeah, a little comfort cocoon. As someone with zero experience or knowledge of the
Hmm.
topic, I think I understood that the way you intended it, and
Yeah, I really wanted to highlight the trust that's needed to do something like that. Because I know, like I said, I read all books, I read all genres, and with dark romance, you're right. Like sometimes it just goes into it, so there's no exploration of the consent side of it,
mhm.
the aftercare, which is important. Making sure that the other person is okay and everything. totally fine with that when I read it.
Mhm.
But for me, when I was writing it, I particularly wanted to highlight the emotional side of things, which is something that is seen when you're doing it in real life as well.
Yeah, I think that did a very good job just throughout this book and how it's used in the various ways it is, but specifically in the comfort and trust way, and the
Yeah.
and also giving up a little bit of power because of
Yes.
that trust.
Uh-huh.
It almost rewired even my stereotype, I guess you could say, because I told you I went into it just assuming one way, which I was like, pop off, go crazy, each their own, absolutely. But it rewired, and how you said people kind of make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
I had an assumption, and then I ended up learning this almost beautiful and deep side of
It
what
is.
Ari
Yeah.
is,
Yeah,
and
it can be.
it was
Mm-hmm.
a very fun and enlightening moment for me
Oh, I'm
as a
glad to hear that. Yay.
And then pain method. When we're flipping switches a little bit. What was that
Yes.
one?
Hojutsu, I believe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right because it's been a minute. Um, but yes.
We see
Yeah,
the
Hojutsu.
most. I feel like we get the most scenes of that kind of at the beginning, and then in our epilogues, they kind of bookend the in between,
Yes.
and where she does find her disgusting human being who trafficked her, bought her at 9, and abused her for
Mm-hmm.
24 years. She's getting hers. Um,
Yes.
and we see that she, alongside Rowan, are using ropes, which are something intimate between the two of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're using them in this other way so that she can exact vengeance and get her peace and get her retribution for all of the horrible wrongs that were done to her.
Correct.
And while it was using this technique in a way of pain as opposed to pleasure, there was still, I felt like, a level of trust and understanding between her and Rowan that we see there in his guidance of her and his treatment of her and his kind of reminding her of her goals,
Yes.
and taking something that is, like I said, is intimate between the two of them, and then to this different direction.
Correct. They are both morally gray going into morally black together. Yes.
I don't typically live in the darker romantasy area.
Yeah,
So when
absolutely.
I first started, I was like, oh, we're starting hot and heavy. It's dark. But I was like, I need to know more. I need to know how she regains herself. So I kept going, and I was so happy I did.
Yeah.
And then we had the epilogue where we revisit
Mm-hmm.
our dealer Edward, who's going through it,
Yep.
and I was left needing to know more there too.
Yes, I wrote it that way specifically because I knew I knew that if I had possibly started the book with just chapter 1 where you're introduced to Violet, it was going to be a lot to throw into a person. Like I said, with the reincarnation, people are going to be like, what's going on? So writing the prologue and the epilogue the way that I did was a method to try and go ahead and let the readers know it's it's not exactly a spoiler. It's a spoiler, but it's not, because it talks about how in essentially the blurb she's hunting him down, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It shows you the end, but you don't get to see the journey. So it's
And
not really a spoiler. So it
no,
raises the
yep.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I thought the same thing when I finished it, because I was like, okay, yes, I know, obviously she's got him, got
Mm-hmm.
that, but I need to know how she got him. I need to
Yes.
know how we got there. I need to know what's going on with her and Rowan. How's her dad feel
Mm-hmm.
about it? I need to know every little detail
Yep.
that led up to her getting hers. So I don't think it read as a negative spoiler in any way.
That's great. Yeah.
It left me needing to have answers. So then I did kind of want to also, I guess, shift back a little, because I've gone back
Sure.
and forth a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So Rowan is there to keep an eye on her. She's going to do her own thing. She's like, I'm going to enact my revenge plan, and you can either be a part of it or get out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he, being him, he's not concerned about how she's choosing to go about it. He's just like, look, you have to have a solid plan, because right now you're going to get
Yes.
yourself hurt. So I'm not
Yes.
against you getting your revenge, but we need a plan, a better plan.
Correct.
One thing that stood out to me was the choice of profession for
Oh
Violet.
yes.
I thought that was interesting. Because one, we had Rowan's response when she was trying out to be an exotic dancer, where
Mm-hmm.
he was just, in no way was he judging her. He was entranced by her. But that was her choice. And then when she's sore and her feet are bleeding after, he's just like, okay, let's get you home. There was no,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, harsh judgment on that.
Mm-hmm.
this is typically a profession that I feel like, as you mentioned, can get a lot of assumptions, can get a lot of
It does.
negative views. People find it over, women are selling themselves, over sexualizing themselves, whatever
Hmm.
have it. Not typically, it's typically frowned upon by society as a whole, I would say, in my opinion.
Yes.
um what made you go with this profession, and really want to highlight that, because I would say it's kind of a very important part of her journey, in my
Correct. Well, it was a combination of things. One, growing up, because I live in the South, where essentially you're right, like certain professions like that are considered very against the church, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
But for me, growing up, I had always thought it was just, it should be normalized. Like it's just another job. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with individuals that choose that career. And that's why Rowan's response is the way that it is, because it's a reflection of my own. Like, just, it doesn't really matter what type of job that you have. I
Yeah.
mean, it really just depends on your own ethics and morals. Because anyone at any job could do shady things.
Oh,
It's,
absolutely.
yeah. So I chose that profession because it was also the opportunity to give Violet the chance to own her body back. There
I
weren't,
was thinking
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yes, there weren't many other jobs. I guess I could have done sex work too, but at the
Mhm.
same time, like I wanted to give her the opportunity to have choice. And so there are a couple clubs that down here that, for example, you can just do dancing. You don't have to do lap dancing. You can
Mhm.
for extra money, but you can just choose to dance with an individual and not have to worry about doing anything else. And then obviously, there are other professions out there, inclusive of sex work and stuff, where people talk
Mhm.
about how they do certain niche and certain things. Um, there's and there's it was just meant to really, like I said, highlight the real world, essentially, that.
Yeah, no, I thought that was well done, because that was the first thing I thought too. Because I was like, you could have, as the author, this is your world. You can do what you want. You could have
Hmm.
chosen anything. She could have been a bartender, a cocktail waitress,
Yeah.
a female bouncer. I don't know. The opportunities are endless, but it felt very intentional that you
Hmm.
went this route. And I did immediately think, okay, this is a way of almost owning her sexuality, embracing her
Yes.
sexuality, owning her body. This is what I want to do with it. It's my right to do with it as I please.
Yes. Yes.
And I am a sexual, sexy, beautiful human being with a beautiful
Hmm.
body. This is how I'm picturing she's thinking to herself.
Yeah.
Um, but there's nothing wrong if I want to show it to the world as I choose.
Yes.
So
And
I saw
that's
it as empowering for the character.
absolutely. And that's usually what I hear from, close friends and stuff that might do stripping, or they do just any type of work that involves working with individuals, like bartending, for example. Like you
Mhm.
have to be able to talk with people, get them interested to buy drinks from you. Like you're essentially selling yourself, but it's your choice on how you want to sell yourself, right? It gives you that
Consenting
opportunity.
adults. Yep.
Correct. Yes.
No, yeah, I thought that that was the direction you're going to go with that.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful it was, because that's how I read it. That's how I read her character, and
Yes.
I adored Rowan throughout the whole thing.
Hmm.
And I think a part, kind of going off of her club scene and her club plan, where I think Rowan really stood out as this never quit, truly loyal, deeply protective human being,
Hmm.
was the night she got drugged.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was really powerful how it showed they did everything they could to prevent this. We brought our own waters. You don't eat food there. He did everything, but it
So
still happened.
yeah, that's actually to reflect how we have to think as women. Um,
No,
I
no,
hate to
really
say
though.
that.
Don't put your drink down. Don't turn your head a second. Don't do
Yes.
things. Just
Yeah, you can't even run at night. I know that's some of
no,
my male
really
friends
though.
just, yeah, they don't understand. They really don't. And I mean, I hate to say, unfortunately, in this world, I'm not going to present it in a way that we're always in danger. It's nothing like that. But we have different things that we have to think about,
Different
unfortunately.
concerns. I think that's
Correct.
really well put. I like how you put that, because I don't want it to seem like women are always the victims and we're just always on edge because you never
No,
know we're going to get attacked, and that's not the case. It's
that's
just
not.
inevitably between genders or races or ethnicities, there are just
Correct.
things that certain people do have to worry about that you
Correct.
don't have to, and that's not attacking everybody else. That's just
Hmm.
a fact of life. That's
Yeah.
just It's
And
just
that
it.
was the reflection with Rowan, like being safe, right? You know, taking your own food, your own water. If you don't see, you know, where it came from, if you don't trust the person, then don't stress about accepting it. Don't feel forced to accept something you don't want to accept, right?
Yep.
Do what you think is best. And that was the way that it was presented in the story, was they wanted to bring their own things because he was
Yeah. And
overprotective, but also because he knew that she wouldn't be able to keep track of it. So
yeah. And I thought too, it kind of spoke, I guess, to your point that he was so shocked it happened. Whereas I, as a reader, and I guess as a woman, I wasn't. So he's
mhm.
like, we did all these things, and bless his heart, we did all these things and all these steps to prevent this. How could this have happened? This would never happen.
Yeah,
But it does
yes,
happen, unfortunately. That's a very real life thing.
it is. It
That
can,
people
yeah.
face.
You can
Um,
do as much as you can to prevent things, but sometimes stuff does happen. And
Sometimes things just happen. I feel like sometimes that can be almost the hardest pill to swallow. That
yep,
you can do everything that you're doing, and
yep,
sometimes it just things happen. So
absolutely.
the night she gets drugged, like I said, this was a moment that Rowan, like, it just stuck in my head really, really aggressively. I couldn't get rid of it. She essentially gets mega mystical people roofied.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good way to
and
put it.
yeah, like it's just a supernatural roofie that makes you go crazy with sexual need. And she is quite literally feels like she's burning from the inside out. She needs this release. And from the second they're at the club and this is happening, and her friends are telling him she's going to need this release, he's like, no, I will not do anything
Mhm.
without consent. I will not do it. I will not do it. I will not do it.
Correct.
And then I got a little worried because I was like, oh, I don't know how we're going to play out of this,
Ah, yeah.
because she needs, like, she's suffering. So I was like, I don't know how we're going to solve this problem without crossing a line. So very well done there on your end.
Thank you.
Um, and then we go back to his place, and she can't handle it on her own. That's just not quenching this drug's effects.
Hmm.
She needs him. She needs his assistance, but he doesn't want to be that person. He doesn't want to be that person in her life that's, well, yes, someone could try to throw it in there like, oh, morally gray. He helps her get this release. He did it because he had to. He doesn't. He's able to loophole this.
Hmm.
Is how I'm like, he loopholed this where he helps her help herself and then denies himself any sort of release or gratification
Correct.
after she's able to reach her release. And
Correct.
that was just such a complex portion of this story to me. Because even denying himself gratification while she's asleep, while he's aroused because he's a human being, well,
Hmm.
kind of, but he's, you know what I mean? It's just biology and it's someone he cares about. And he's like, no, because I don't want her to wake up to see that and feel
Yeah.
like I'm like using the situation
Hmm.
for my own advantage. I just thought it was so powerful that he
Thank
found a way to
you.
help her without taking advantage of her.
Yeah. It was a very complex scene to write, because kind of like what you said, how do you show the remorse in the character, you know, while he definitely wants to make sure that she is consenting and he's worried about the implications and she's technically under the effects of the aphrodisiac, you know, how that would work. um, and I'm glad that you read it the way that you did, because I was not sure if it would show truly how he felt, if it would truly show him as a person and the morals that he stands behind it. Because he is a morally great character, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he'll kill somebody if he needs to, but at the
Oh
same
yeah.
time, he is very respectful of women and their choices because of the life that he lived. And it's hinted a little bit throughout the story and everything, because
Mm-hmm.
he talks about how he would bodyguard for the brothel women in the frozen wastelands. So he got to see firsthand how they were treated. So for him, like, consent was such a huge thing. Also, it explains why he had the interest in the rope tying that he does, because once again, consent is such a huge thing for him.
Mm-hmm.
So writing that scene, that was my main focus, was even with, sometimes there are situations that happen where the consent is somewhat there. Um, you can still feel bad afterwards and you have to be able to process it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah,
wanted to,
no,
yeah,
that
to reflect that.
yeah, and I definitely saw that because even after all this happens and she's finally able to sleep because she's just no
Hmm.
longer in pain. Like the whole, and I guess unless you read this book, and hopefully you read it if you haven't, she's in such an amount and level of pain. It's easy to
Hmm.
see where if he wasn't so steadfast in his morals, where he could have been like, I'll just do it to help her, and that's that, and
Yeah.
we'll just get it done. And it's almost like, would she have blamed him? And that could have been a whole other separate direction. But instead, he goes about it the way he does, and then
Hmm.
even after, he's still questioning himself and how he approached
100%.
it. If it was
Yeah.
okay. And it's not until she really gives him that, like, I'm okay, you're okay, everything was consensual, this is what I want. She really breaks it down for him. Does he, how I read it,
Correct.
kind of take that breath, and then
Hmm.
they move forward with their romantic relationship from there and
Correct. Yes.
have each
And
other's back.
because, and
Team.
it, yeah. And it, once again, it's to highlight, you know, in any relationship, whether it's a normal one or a king specific one, like you have to have that verbal communication.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way the other person is going to read your mind. You have to be able to talk with each other. So having that trust and that comfort to be able to express yourself and tell someone like, hey, I liked what you did. Hey, I didn't like what you did. And then converse together on things that could have been done differently or kept going with it was important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think their communication, it you kind of watch it evolve as they like open up more to each other
Hmm.
and share parts of themselves that they don't really share with other people or they didn't share before. You see their communication evolve,
Yeah.
as their relationship evolves, and it's strong. It's strong. They're snarky. They're
Yeah.
smart mouths, but it's
Yes.
strong. Yeah, I just love that. I felt like that was almost a key point and almost a turning point
Yeah,
in the direction of this book, specifically in their relationship.
it was.
It
Thank
was a
you.
hard,
I'm
it was
so
a hard
glad.
scene, but it was beautiful.
Thanks.
And then just I guess we can end on a little bit of a lighter note.
Hmm.
We can go. What was your favorite moment between your FMC and your MMC? What was your favorite moment?
Um, it's
Rowan?
actually when Rowan watches Violet dance. My question, that answer to
Yeah.
the question has not changed.
No,
Uh,
absolutely.
watching Rowan, or sorry, writing Rowan watch Violet dance for the very first time, and that interaction was probably my favorite scene. Just because even though Violet doesn't talk with him specifically, they had kind of their snarky attitude
Hmm.
beforehand with it.
Right beforehand, yeah.
But to see the realization of, oh, she is definitely a woman. Oh, this is very empowering. Like he can sense there's a shift in her and that
Hmm.
she is way deeper than what he had allowed himself to think on her. Once
The
again,
little
going
spoiled rich girl.
exactly like the face value thing that we keep
Mhm.
referencing. And that he was falling for her essentially at that point.
Yeah, no, you
Um,
could definitely feel the yearning in the dance. They weren't verbally communicating during the dance, but there was that communication that was still happening that
yeah.
you could kind of sense in reading, and looking for and stuff like that. So that was a good
Hmm.
scene. It was
Yes.
very well. Wow. And then I guess my final question on the little lighter notes would be your favorite or what you love most about Violet. What attribute, what about her is your absolute favorite thing?
um, her snarkiness is probably
It's so good.
it is like just how she is as a person. When I sit and I have to think about her chapters and everything, I don't she's obviously bratty, but she's bratty in a way that she knows what she wants, and that is a characteristic. Like for example, if you explain that you're a brat in the kink world, it has certain assumptions for you. It essentially means like you like to challenge whoever your partner is because you're
Okay.
constantly trying. It has a lot to do with constantly trying to get reassurance because if you challenge this person, then ideally they should respond back in kind. And it doesn't have to be snarky. It could be sometimes putting you in place, right?
Hmm.
But it helps reassure the person, the bratty person, um, that they can feel safe. They can vocalize the things that they do without having someone, I don't want to say react negatively, but they have someone that is still there with them.
That's not going
Um,
to be not judgmental.
exactly. Not be judgmental, not leave them. And, you know, even if she didn't have someone, like Violet is written to be very empowered, that she can just be snarky on her own. Like she's been given the opportunity essentially to have her second chance to be herself without having to worry about, you know, punishment, repercussions because of the previous life that she lived.
The
So
life
she
she never
is
got to live. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So she knows now what she wants and she's not afraid to hold back or, you know, tell others about it. for sure.
I absolutely love that about her because you're right. She has a second chance, and she's not going to waste it. She is
Correct.
going to live her life the way that she wants and makes her happy and gets her what she needs unapologetically, which you
Absolutely.
love to see in an FMC. So, book two, is there anything you can share with me timeline wise, what we can expect? If there's absolutely nothing, that's okay too.
Oh, you're
No
fine.
matter what, I'm excited and I'm looking forward to it.
Yay! So timeline wise, I don't have one yet. I don't want to put a pre-order up and potentially mess up anything, right?
Oh, no, I
So,
understand completely.
but what I am doing in the meantime is, while book two is being worked on and everything. For example, if you liked Damien and the second circle aspect of it, I started writing second circle entries, which essentially is, it's essentially Damien writing in his big book of clientele, different gods, monsters, deities pairing with mortals or sometimes with each other. So Captured Prey is the first one that I wrote, where it's a Slavic folklore. So once again, I like pulling from real world. I pulled a folklore story about a monster that's called a Leshy. It's a tree guardian, and I've got this picture somewhere. Yeah, there you go. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So the first entry is about a Leshy pairing with an academic mortal. It's got primal play in it, and if you don't like monster romance, they're all written to be standalones, which is perfectly fine. But they also have Easter eggs. So obviously, you meet Damien from the club, which this is his character art, and you get to slowly learn a little bit about the other side. So about what's going on in the background. Because like I said, since I have such a heavy world going on, I wanted to give readers the opportunity to be able to pull information from different stories. And so that was the purpose of Second Circle, was to give you the opportunity that if you wanted to, you could go over there to read Easter eggs.
Oh, I love that. And I love kind of trying to go back and find the connections between each other. But also, if you don't have the time or you don't have an interest in this specific storyline, you don't have to.
So absolutely not. Absolutely, because it will get explained in book two as well. But if you want to read something in between, that's there as an option.
Oh no, fantastic!
And then with book two, there are going to be obviously more gods. You met Death in book one. You also met technically you had met a goddess also in book one. Her name was referenced when Rowan was in the in-between realm.
Oh yeah,
on the door. Yes. So you'll see her in book two. You're going to get more into the politics of what the supernaturals. So you're going to see more of Natalia and Alice in book two.
I am very interested in that, especially after the whole throwdown in the city streets and treaties, and you can't be killing. I'm like, wait, I need to know more about just how these otherworldly beings, they work together, what rules they have with immortal. I need to know everything.
Yes, that gets pretty much book two is going to start obviously very heavy because of where the cliffhanger was, and it's going to stay persistently fast throughout the rest of it because everything is now out on the table. I posted a character art of one of the monsters that I'm excited about, where it's essentially called, I mentioned it one time in Fated Rebirth, and I don't know if anyone noticed the reference, but it is called the Chittering Dark. And I think it's in the I don't remember. Rowan talks about it essentially.
I know. Naturally, I'm going to go back and look.
So the monster's called the Chittering Dark. I posted some character art the artist is working on. She's not finished with yet, but essentially it's a giant entity that is just black ooze and smoke and shadow, but it's covered in teeth, and the teeth chatter.
That sounds horrifying.
Oh yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah. So book two is going to be definitely more of just stuff coming out, and you're going to learn a little bit on how things have remained hidden and why they've been hidden. And then a play on words, which I can go ahead and probably just reveal this, even though it's a tiny bit of a spoiler. In book one, they talk a lot about something called the veil.
Yes.
Okay. So the veil has two meanings. The veil obviously is like a middle ground between where humanity starts and where the supernatural world starts. It's not, it's both a kind of a physical thing, but it's also actually in reference to a government entity that is working in the background to try and keep things hidden. So I've got a military book coming out where it slowly starts. It shows the beginning of the veil being created.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
yeah,
I love
so
that.
it was a play on words, like the veil. You know, most fantasy readers and romantasy readers know the veil means like it's the in between the real
Yeah.
world and then
Yeah, it's pretty standard, a pretty standard kind of thing to throw in there to separate the two.
yes, but it's also actually a government entity. It's an acronym, which I won't reveal what the acronym is.
I'll wait. I'll patiently
Yeah.
wait.
So there's going to be two series on that. The first series is going to be more contemporary, like military men mortal stuff, and
Hmm.
they're called the Sentinels of the Veil. And then you're
Okay.
going to have the supernatural side, which is think like the TV show Supernatural, where they go and
Hmm.
hunt certain things.
Yeah.
They're called the Revenants of the Veil. So
Okay.
they go through.
Notes.
They're the
I'm intrigued.
ones. Yes, they're the ones that essentially the Revenants specifically try and keep things from getting out of hand. So like they go to haunted houses and they make sure that the ghosts don't mess with people. If there's a runaway monster, like for example, I don't know, like a fae that's causing
Mhm.
trouble in a certain town, they'll go in and they'll try and keep it hush and keep it quiet. So
Behind the scenes.
it's just different
Everything else.
things that happen behind the scenes. Because, like I said, the world that I have in my head is really, really big.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's never a bad thing because everything you've mentioned, I'm like, oh wait, that intrigues me. Oh wait, I'm curious about that. Oh,
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
And now I'm going to be looking for more as I read your stories. I'm like, oh,
yes,
I
and
wonder how this ties back to that.
yes, exactly. I love doing little Easter eggs like that, and obviously it'll be touched in book two, so all of those things get introduced and everything. But those are different stories and projects that I've been working on, and then at the very end where they talk about the strega
Mhm.
means witch. So you guys will see in book two, the strega, which is the witch. She lives in a house that currently houses the 9 cardinal sins. I didn't do 7. I have 9 because historically, and I'm still finishing all my research. There were actually more than 7 sins in our world, like in modern world.
Yeah.
It wasn't until a Catholic priest came in and pretty much said, like, we're just going to stick with 7. So in my world, I get to pool and I'm going to make them 9, essentially.
Wow. I
So,
now oh now I feel like now I even feel like I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to do a history dive. Like I'm curious, what sins did we leave behind?
yes. And
It's
that's a lot of the inspiration for my books this is a lot of stuff that gets forgotten. People don't
mhm.
realize it. So I have fun pulling it out. And I'm like, obviously, it's my interpretation of it. I'm not saying I'm going
Yeah,
to
of
be
course.
historically accurate. But yeah, I have fun pulling out things, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't know this was a real thing. I thought you made it up." Like,
Yeah, even
no.
better because now I need to deep dive here. No,
Yes.
I love the pulling from the real life, pulling from the forgotten because
Mm-hmm.
it takes I feel like it takes every meaning in your story kind of to that next level,
Thank
which
you.
now naturally I'm going to be looking out for.
Yeah,
So
have
it
fun with
sounds
that.
like you have a ton to look forward to in your realm, not just for Fated Rebirth, but even for these these stories off of Fated
Yes.
Rebirth and these monsters. So I'm very excited. I
Yay.
will patiently awaiting and following your Instagram um, for updates. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to read more. And just thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I enjoyed it and I loved your book. So getting to
Thank
learn
you
the
so
why behind
much.
it was fantastic. And I appreciate
No,
that.
thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun talking about it. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you. And we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds great. Thank you.